What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of High Mythology, the show where we get high enough to gobble up the moon, just like Heidi. We tell you guys silly stories from mythology and folklore. Tonight, we will be bringing you the final Norse Tales. It's been a journey.
It has.
It's been a journey through the prose-edda. This isn't necessarily, I'm not saying we're done with Viking mythology or Norse mythology. This is the last of the traditional prose-edda Norse tales. We've followed these gods all the way from day one when they were just crawling out of that Gungan gap.
We've kind of been a little everywhere.
Yeah,
So there is like in the middle between these four stories is Loki's flight.
Yeah, which we did Loki flighting way back in the day. It was one of my favorite.
It was a very good
It's just Loki shit talking all the gods.
Yes.
But tonight we will be finishing it off. We've got 4 stories for you guys. All the way to Ragnarok. Mm-hmm. Can't stop till Ragnarok.
Short, actually. So.
Yeah, Ragnarok is the shortest story they have.
No, I would say Baldur's Dreams.
Baldur's Dreams.
Which is the one we're going to start out.
Well, then, there we go.
Bam.
Without further ado, Kimbo, go ahead and launch into it. Take it away.
Thank you.
Get this shit going. Where's the...
Oh.
Woo.
Thank you. The god moaned. He twisted and wreathed as he tried to escape the dark sharts. The dark shapes. I've been listening to you way too much to reenact all these Disney songs. I'm sorry. He panted and moaned again, and then he woke. For a long while, the fairest of the gods laid in the half-light.
Just smoking a cigarette just covered in his own leavings. Well, I'm worthless.
His brow gleaming as white as the whitest flower. His hair shining, and he tried to snare his dreams.
I didn't want to get it in my hair, of all places, but, in the moment.
To name each form and dismiss it. But the shapes sculled in the shadows, shapeless now that he awoke. And in time, his fear lapsed into a dull foreboding. Wow. He closed his eyes and began to drift. No sooner was he asleep than his ghastly skull gas crept forward yet again. Monstrous forms intent on snuffing out the light of him. He thrust and kicked, and he called out to his own, and shout woke him.
Ah!
Oh, he called out, and his own shout woke him. Sorry.
Yeah,
Once more, he felt fearful and exposed and doomed.
Dude, that's I'm a weirdo. Sometimes I yell myself awake like that. Kim has had to deal with that for
I dealt with that a couple nights ago, actually.
Yeah, just the casual. What the fuck? Okay, I'm going back to sleep. I hope I didn't just get all of your adrenaline going.
I need a cigarette now. I can't take this. When the gods and goddesses heard about Baldur's dreams, they anxiously gathered to discuss their meaning. They said that he was the most merciful, the most gentle, and the most gentle and loved of them all, and least deserving to such unwelcome night visitors. They said nothing tainted had ever crossed their thresholds of Breidablik before. But all they said... Fuck.
Odin bless you.
Thank you. But all they said only disturbed them more. They could not unravel Baldur's dreams. The Allfather says,
I will go myself and return with a meaning.
The magician, old as time, stood up and hurried out of the council. He saddled Sleipnir and galloped over the quivering rainbow and took the long, long track that led north from Midgard down into the gloom and swirling mists of Niflheim. Hel's hound heard Odin coming. The hair on Graham's throat and chest was caked with blood, and he bayed from his cliff cave at the entrance to the underworld.
Bye.
The master of runes took no notice. He galloped so hard that the frozen ground thumbled under Sleipnir's 8 hooves, and he did not let up until he had reached Hel's forbidding hall. Here Odin dismounted. He peered into the hall. It was packed out with the dead, and gleaming with gold rings and gold ornaments, and then led Sleipnir round to the east door, near which a seer, the bitch was buried. Odin stood beside her mound and fixed one glittering eye upon it. Then he began to use charms.
I'm just gonna check out this mound.
Then he began to use his charms, and in the gloom, a pale specter of the seers rose out of the earth and loomed over him. She moaned, "Oh, who is this stranger who forces me up and unearths me to sorrows? Snow has settled on me, rain has lashed me, dew has seeped through me. I have long been dead." Odin says,
"My name is Vegtam, the Wanderer, and Valtam's son. Give me news of hell. I have traveled already through the other worlds. Why are gold rings strewn along the benches in Hell's Hall? And why is the whole place all decorated with gold and stuff? Were you expecting a guest?" So Odin with his names is starting to really remind me of that guy who's always trying to sell a nickname for himself, but it never works. Like everywhere he goes, like, "No, I'm Vegtam the Wanderer." They're like, "No one's gonna call you that, dude." "My name's Floofengoffel." "No, it's not, Odin."
Nobody names their kids that, dude.
Yeah, no one's gonna call you that.
It literally means waffle shit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The seer says, "The shining maid is brewed for Balder. A shield covers its cauldron. For all their glories, the gods will be filled with despair. I was unwilling to speak, and I will say no more now." No. Odin says,
"Theorith! Theorith? Theorith, you must stay. You must answer all that I ask. Who will slay Balder and drain the lifeblood of Odin's son?"
The seer says, "The blind Hod will carry a fatal branch. He will slay Balder and drain the lifeblood of Odin's son. I was unwilling to speak, and I will say no more now." No. Odin says,
"Theorith, I am definitely not just Odin with a mustache. You must stay. You must answer all that I ask. Who will take vengeance on Hod? Hod? Who will carry Balder's fire to the pyre?
The seer says,
I wonder."
"Rind will lie with Odin, and the son will be Vali, born of Vestrael, the western hull. He will take his vengeance when there is only but one night old. He will not wash his hands nor comb his hair before he has carried Balder's slayer to the pyre. I was unwilling to speak, and I will say no more. No.
No.
Odin says,
"Theorith, please stay and tell me things. You must. You must answer all that I ask. Who are the maidens who will king then, huh? And toss the scarves up against the sky with the sky scarves? Who are those?"
The seer says, "You are not a victim, as I believe you to be.
Damn it.
You are Odin, the magician, all this time."
She saw through my finger mustache.
Odin says,
"And you are no theorist. Nor are you wise. You are the mother of 3 monsters."
The seer says, and her right voice is rising and gloating, but I am not going to do that. "Ride home, Odin, and boast about your skills. No one will raise me again until Loki breaks free from his fetters, and all the forces of darkness gather before Ragnarok."
Yeah. "Well, I will, or they don't call me Odin Big Dick."
The specter, pale and gleaming, began to ooze and sink back into her grave. Then Odin turned away. He mounted Sleipnir with a heavy heart. The end.
The end.
The next story.
The next story is so we already did we do the binding of Loki? We didn't.
We have not, but it is coming.
It is coming.
It is between after this story.
I see.
Then should be Loki's flighting. You'll go back to your shit, and then we're gonna go to binding
Loki's flighting where he tells everyone to fuck off.
And that's what gets him in trouble.
And you, Odin. I remember that one time.
All right, so the death of Balder. You ready?
The death of Balder. Where's the Whomper?
A long one.
Just your silence says it all.
Thank you. The death of Balder. The gods and goddesses gathered in the shadow of Balder's terrible dreams that threatened to pinch him into the darkness forever. Not one of them doubted his life was in danger, and for a long time they discussed how to protect him. The gods and goddesses thought of all the ways in which one can die. They named each earth thing, sea thing, and sky thing that can cause sudden death. Then Balder's mother, Frigg, began to travel through the 9 worlds to get each and every substance to swear an oath that it would not harm Balder. Fire swore an oath, water swore an oath, iron and every other kind of metal swore an oath. The stones swore an oath, and nothing could stay Frigg from her mission or resist her sweet troubling persuasion. Earth swore an oath, the trees swore an oath, each kind of illness swore an oath. Balder's mother was untiring and painstaking. All the animals swore an oath, and so did every sliding snake. Then the gods and goddesses met again, and Frigg satisfied them that she had done as they had asked, and that nothing in creation would harm Balder. They said,
"We should put that to the test."
And one picked up a pebble and lobbed it so that it landed right on Balder's head. Whatever power the small stone had, it withheld it. Balder did not even know the pebble had struck him. He said,
just the tiniest pebble. we should put it to the test. Take that. Blow some air at you. I could not feel it at all.
Then all the gods and goddesses laughed. They left a glad shriek and streamed out into the sunlight. The hall's gold roof and gold walls were glowing, and the green plain of Idavol teemed with activity. The gods' servants coming and going, troops of light elves hurrying about their business, visitors to Asgard staring in wonder about them, and animals of many kinds grazing or dozing. All of them.
Dozy.
All of them glad to be alive.
I shouldn't have taken that Ambien before I went out to graves.
Thank you. The foremost gods met. I think it's a great idea, but that's just me. The foremost gods met in Gladstream and the goddesses in Vingolf. They ruled over Asgard. They discussed the feats and the fates of the heroic men in Midgard. And after their councils, they often met together and were joined by the jostling throngs, gossiping, sociable, eager for amusement.
I love a good jostling throng.
Sometimes they drank, sometimes they sang, and they made trials of their strength and played games of all kinds. It was not long before the gods thought that they should check Balder's safety again. They could not resist the sport. One tossed a pebble at him, and it struck him in the cheekbone. Another aimed a stick at him, and it hit him in the chest. Balder says,
I could not feel them at all.
Then the gods laughed and tried other tests. One thing led to another, and soon they became very bold. They made Balder stand against a wall as a target and threw some darts with wicked points at him. And the darts bounced off him and fell at his feet. Some brought in stones and hurled them at him.
Stand in front of this cannon real quick.
The rest struck him with their axes and slashed at them with their swords. And the tempered metal would not scathe Balder. It would not but even graze him. The fairest and most gentle of the gods became the butt of most violent assaults, and they did not harm him. Everyone.
Let me put stuff in your butt.
Let me put this firecracker in there.
Let me put a fire. Bend over. Let me stick this black cat up your pooper. If you don't feel that, I don't know what you will.
Everyone present enjoyed this new game hugely, and they all rejoiced that it was impossible to hurt him. All except Loki. The sly one, watching with distaste and impatience, troubled and suffering were meat and drink to him, and it sickened him to see that Balder was immune from every kind of attack. This grudge grew on him every day and began to consume him. He refused to take part in the games, and yet he was unable to keep away. One afternoon, Loki was loafing as usual against the door of Gladstream, watching the assembly, when an idea occurred to him. He half closed his eyes, he licked his twisted lips and smiled. Unnoticed, he stepped out of the hubbub and quickly walked off in the direction of Fenslayer. Loki paused. He had a careful look around, and there was nobody about. Then he whispered the charm, and the shape changer turned himself into an old woman. As Loki hoped, Frigg was in her hall all alone. And Loki hobbled across the floor. She sniffed, wiped her dripping nose with the back of her hand, and rubbed against her grubby dark dress. She demanded to know.
Where am I?
Frigg rose, greeting the old woman, and named herself. The observed old woman says,
It's a long way from home, and I'm not sure it's been worth coming.
Frigg listened patiently, and the old hag continued to rant.
I passed the place some way back. What a noise. I couldn't get anyone to listen. And the people were all stoning one man. One poor man. He had a white face. Super white. He had some dilbert glasses.
Covered in jizz.
And shining, glistening white person hair. One against all, yes. I didn't know that sort of thing went on in Asgard.
Frigg smiled faintly and thought it was wise to wait until the old woman had her say, the hag says.
I didn't stay long. I never did like stonings. Who would have thought it? So far to have come, and then it's much of the same. He hadn't got long, poor man. He'll be dead by now, yes.
The old woman rambled on. It seemed she had quite forgotten she was in company. But now she shook her head fiercely and glared at Frigg and says,
What was going on then? Do you know why they were stoning him?
Frigg told the old woman that what she had seen was not a stoning, but a host of gods and goddesses sporting with her own son. She explained that Balder had not been hurt by a single stone and was just as ready to take part as anyone else. The old woman asked,
What kind of magic is that then?
She had the makings of a moustache, and it was twitching in a disturbing way.
I'm definitely not just Loki in a gray wig.
Frigg replies, Nothing will hurt Balder. No metal will harm him. No wood will wound him. I've taken an oath from everything, the old woman says.
Everything? Even a pinch of salt? I suppose he's okay. I suppose he can survive high cholesterol then.
Sorry. Frigg began to feel irritated with this wearisome crone. She shrugged as if she were just trying to get rid of her. The old woman sniffed, saying,
Everything? You really mean that everything has sworn to you an oath that it will not hurt Balder?
Frigg says dismissively, Everything, except that little bush that grows west of Valhalla, the mistletoe. That's so young, I didn't bother with it. The old woman grunted and said,
Well, then I will use it to kill your son, and one day people will kiss under it for a holiday. Oh, sorry. Well, you've given me the time of day. Yes. Now I'll be getting along because I am definitely an old woman and for sure not just Loki in a gray wig.
Frigg inclined her head. The old woman turned and painfully made her way to the doors of Fenslayer. And Frigg was not in the least sorry to see her go. As soon as he was quite certain he was alone, the shape changer muttered the magic words, and then, crowing, he resumed his old form Loki again.
Just pulled off the gray wig. Ha! It was me all along, and no one knew. My disguises are amazing.
Jesus. Jauntily, the trickster walked across the plain of Idavol, deserted now except for the animals that stood in motionless groups as if they were waiting or had never moved. The air was thickening and the distance and middle distance were blurred and bluish. It was almost night. Loki hurried past Gladshim, and he hurried towards Valhalla and smiled to himself as he had heard the Inherjar shouting. In Herjar. He hurried on west in the fading light, whistling and looking sharply to the left and to the right and under his feet. And then he entered a small grove. And there, rooted neath neither in earth nor water, but growing out of the trunk of an oak, the sly one found what he had come for, the spray of mistletoe.
Oh, spray of mistletoe?
Its berries gleamed like clusters of pale eyes. Its leaves were green and yellow-green. Its stem and small branches and twigs were green. Unmoving and otherworldly, it seemed in broad daylight, and even more strange now in half-light. Loki grabbed at its little bush and wrenched at it until it came away from the oak. Then he left the grove and took the path to Gladshim, picking at the spray as he hurried along. He chose the straightest branch, almost as long as his forearm, and stripped it down, leaving a small trail of droppings behind him. Loki sharpened one end of it, and he stroked it against his belt, and stepped into the warm light of the hall. The gathering in Gladshim was so caught up in the game that they were playing that no one was aware Loki had gone, and no one noticed that he had just come back. The sly one looked around. He smiled, and when he saw that Frigg had joined the company, his lips tightened and his eyes narrowed as he watched the blind Hod, Baldur's brother, standing in the little side as usual, pathetic in his slow, fumbling movements. And when Loki saw that many of the gods were once again hurling darts at the long-suffering Baldur, he doubled up. For a moment, his whole body was convulsed, as if in laughter or in terrible pain. A servant hurried up and offered Loki wine, and Loki drank the cup at one draught and then sauntered across the spacious hall behind the semiracle of the gods and their followers. He sidled up to Hod and poked him in the ribs. Hod says,
"That can only be Loki."
The voice in his ear says,
"None other."
Hod says,
"Oh, well."
Loki says,
"Why don't you join in? Why aren't you throwing darts at your brother?"
Hod says,
"Because I can't see where he is."
Loki sucks his cheek, and Hod says,
"And also I have no weapon."
Loki says, measuring indignation,
"This is not as it should be. They do wrong to ignore you, and you, his brother."
Hod's expression did not alter. He had long since learned to accept his fate. He says,
"Oh, well, nothing comes of ranking resentment." No better character could have any voice. Yeah, but he said that to Hod, and Hod had already accepted that he was a worthless piece of shit, so he didn't care about anything Loki was saying.
Hod's words were drowned in a roar of laughter. Hod asks,
"What was that?"
Loki says,
"Only more of the same, a dart well aimed. But now it's your turn, Hod. You should pay your respects to Baldur like everybody else. Throw a handful of feces at him."
Hod repeated,
"I have no weapon, and I don't poop."
Loki puts the sharpened mistletoe into Hod's hand and says,
"Take this twig, then. I'll show you where he's standing. I'll stand behind you and guide your hand." Like the movie Ghost.
Loki's eyes were on fire now. His whole body was on fire. His face was ravaged by wolfish evil and hunger. Hod grasped the mistletoe and lifted his right arm. Guided by Loki, he aimed the dart at his brother Balder. The mistletoe flew through the hall, and it struck Balder. It pierced him and passed right through him. The god fell on his face. He was dead.
Thank God it wasn't poop.
There was no sound in Gladsheim. No sound. Only the roaring of silence. The gods could not speak. They looked at the fairest and the most wise of them all, shining and lifeless, and they could not even move from where they stood to lift him. The gods stared at each other, and then they turned to stare at Hod and Loki. They had no doubt. They were...
I'll probably get convicted of murder.
They were all of one mind about who had caused Balder's death, and yet none of them were able to take vengeance. The ground of Gladsheim was hollowed, and no one was ready to shed blood in the sanctuary. Hod could not see the fearsome gaze of the gathering, and Loki could not withstand it.
Did I hit my mark? Did everybody like the joke?
He walked towards the doors of Gladsheim and sulked away into the darkness.
It's just a quiet room. He doesn't even know he killed him.
He doesn't know.
Is awkward. Did everybody leave? I guess it's time to go home.
Then the terrible silence was broken. One goddess began to weep, seized by wild grief, and the weeping of one unlocked the floodgates of them all. When they tried to speak, they found that they could not tell their grief, and their words were choked with tears. Odin himself was there, and of all the gods and goddesses, he was the most deeply afflicted. He best understood that this was the greatest evil ever sustained by gods and men, and foresaw what loss and sorrow would follow in the wake of his son's death. Frigg was the first to speak. She asks, Does anyone want to win my love and favor? Anyone? The mourning company turned to her face, and she says, Is there anyone here who will ride the long haul to hell and try to find Balder? Then,
give that woman an Oscar, everybody.
Thank you. Then the goddess buried...
Such raw emotion.
Thank you. I'm trying to read a what? Then the goddesses buried their faces into their hands and sobbed again. Frigg says, raising her voice, Is there anyone here who will offer hell a ransom? Offer her a ransom if she allows my son Balder to come home to Asgard again. Then Hermod stepped forward, Odin's son, whom everyone admired for his boldness. He said,
Oh, hey there. Yeah, no, I'm your guy. Yeah, I'll totally go. I'm ready to go now.
Nice. Got some maple syrup down there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, down where I'm from, that ain't even a thing.
Gladsheim began to breathe and sound again. Odin gave servants orders, and they hurried out of the halls and soon returned with Sleipnir, Odin's own horse. Allfather took the reins and handed them to Hermod. Then, in Gladsheim, Hermod mounted Sleipnir, and he took Dawn. Wow, he looked down at the upturned faces of the gods of the gods and goddesses, and at their fair fallen body of Balder. He raised his hand and spurred the steed. Sleipnir's hooves clattered against the marble floor, and Hermod galloped out of the darkness and on towards the endless night. The gods and goddesses did not sleep. They kept a silent vigil in Gladsheim, ranged around Balder's body, so white that it was gleaming. Each of them...
The dude never got out.
Dude, it was like glow in the dark.
Yeah, it's like glow in the dark. I mean, we're all white people, but my God.
This is true. Fuck, where am I? Thanks a lot, Dustin.
He's got blonde eyebrows even. I mean, Jesus, he just looks like the movie Powder.
There we go. Each of them was prey to his own thoughts and hopes and fears. What chance Hermod had of bringing Balder back from the dead, how to avenge Balder's death on his own unhappy brother Hod, and what kind of punishment would begin to suffice for Loki, and what meaning the death of one must have had for them all. Day began to dawn, and the lightning in the east at first mysterious, and then quickly gathering speed and spread in every direction.
Want me to put the hammer down?
Then, with aching hearts, 4 of the gods lifted Balder's body onto their shoulders, and all the others formed a long cortege. They carried him down to the sea and laid his corpse near Ringhorn, his own great boat with its curved prow. The gods wanted to build Balder's pyre in the waist of the boat, up against the mast, of course,
Of course, yeah.
They
What are we, animals?
They took hold of the stern and tried to launch the boat, but their grief had so exhausted them that they could not summon up the strength to shift it onto its rollers. Then the gods sent a messenger speeding to Jotunheim to ask for the help of the giantess Hirokin. A great crowd out of Asgard sat near the water, watching the pulse of the waves. They were pensive and subdued, and none of them so strong that he could not escape the flux of his own feelings and comforts for others. In a while, Hirokin came. She was a huge and grim, riding a wolf with vipers for reins. As soon as she leapt off her steed, Odin summoned 4 berserks and told them to watch over the wolf and the vipers, and ensured that they caused no harm. The very sight of the 4 men in the animal skins angered the wolf, and its eyes flickered and it snarled.
Not cool, guys. Not cool. I came here all peacefully as somebody's ride, and you're literally wearing my cousin. And nothing else. You're just hanging down. My cousin's dead corpse just draped over you.
The berserk seized the viper reins, but they were unable to hold the wolf fast. First it dragged them one way, and then another, slithering hopelessly through the sand as it tried to break free. Then the berserks became as mad as the wolf themselves, and in a fury they rained blows on the wolves with their club-like fists. They struck it down and left it for the dead in the sand. Bunch of assholes. Hirokin.
Lucky we don't wear you.
Hirokin, meanwhile, stalked up to Ringhorn. She looked at the boat, so large and yet so sweeping and graceful, and gripping the prow, she dug her heels into the horrible gaunt as she pulled and pulled so hard that Ringhorn raced screaming down the rollers and crashed into the water. The pine rollers bursted into flame, and the 9 worlds trembled. Thor shouted,
Enough!
His fingers closed around his hammer, and
you want me to put the hammer down?
and he felt his old strength surging back into him. Hirokin looked at Thor scornfully, and Thor repeated,
Enough! I will teach you respect.
But Odin and several of the other gods hurried to Thor's side and restrained him. They took his arm and reminded him, she is like so fucking here because we asked her to be, remember, dickhead?
You called her to ask for a favor, and she literally came and did that favor, and now you're like, I'll fucking kill you.
Thor mutters.
I'll fucking kill you.
The gods reminded him, it would be wrong to injure her. Leave her. Ignore her. And slowly, Thor's volcanic anger subsided inside him. He kicked at the sand, causing a sandstorm, and walked up and down. The 4 gods who had carried Balder's body down to the sea gently raised it again and waded out to Ringhorn, rocking on the water. They set down his spotless body on the high bench covered in crimson cloth. Balder's wife, Nanna, was watching, and when she saw Balder lying there lifeless, her body shook. She could not control it. She was tearless, in too much pain for tears now. And then Nanna's heart broke. The daughter of Nep died there.
Oh, she literally, her heart literally broke. It just ripped into 2 pieces. Mm-hmm. It's a very rare congenital disease.
And then she, too, was carried out to Ringhorn and laid beside her dead husband.
Anybody else want to catch the boat?
The cortege had swollen to a vast gathering. Odin was there, and his ravens, Thought and Memory, perched on his shoulders. Frigg accompanied him, and so did the Valkyries. Shaker and Mist, Axe Time and Raging, Warrior and Might, Streaking, Host Fetter, and Screaming, spear bearer, shield bearer, wrecker of plans.
Wow. Wrecker of homes.
All of those beautiful maidens, choosers of the slain, stood grouped around the father of battle.
Home wrecker. Yeah, I took your husband. I took him from the living plane.
Freyr had come to the cremation. Sorry. Wow, I was having a brain fart. Like, what?
Start trying to read it like it's a crematation.
I know, right?
Cremation?
In his chariot, drawn by Golembursti, the golden bristled boar fashioned for him by the dwarfs of Rock and Etiri.
Oink, oink.
Heimdall had ridden out of Asgard on his mount Goldtuff, and Freya sat on her chariot drawn by cats. The elves were there. The dwarfs were there.
I know I've laughed at that before, but a cat-shot chariot would be the worst way to get around. Onward! Okay, one of you is licking yourself. One of you just jumped on the top shelf. I'm all teeter-totter now.
Only if you get 1,000 cats to do the same thing at once.
Yeah. That one's it's obsessively licking its asshole while staring into my soul.
That's weird. And hundreds of frost giants and rock giants stood there too. A great gang who had followed Hirokin out of Jotunheim. That was the vast concourse, a mingling of mourners and the merely curious on the foreshore, scuffing the strips of sand that they have never wholly belongs to earth or to the sea. The seabirds rose and wheeled and dipped, screaming, and the sea saw. Wow. A lot of commas in here, sorry. They wheeled and dipped, screaming. The sea sobbed, and everyone there watched the ritual on Ringhorn. The pyre was built around the body of Balder and his wife Nanna, dry faggots that needed nothing more than a spark to leap into their own life and consume the lifeless bodies that lay upon them, releasing their spirits to travel on. Well, it's just a bundle of sticks, okay?
But I just didn't expect that one to come out of nowhere.
It's old school, okay? No, would never use that term in life, okay? The many treasures were laid within Ringhorn, buckles and brooches and rings, clasps and pins. And not only treasures, but knives and buckets and scissors and spindles and spades and all the fabrics of life. Balder's horse, meanwhile, was galloped along the foreshore and worked into a steaming sweat. Then a servant plunged a short dagger into its throat.
Bam!
It gave a violent jerk and without a sound crumpled amongst the wreck. No sooner was it dead than its body was hacked up and into pieces and were thrown into Ringhorn. And now Odin strode through the shallows and gripped the gunwale.
It's so he can ride his horse in the afterlife. Then shouldn't we have left it whole?
Carry it, man.
It didn't fit.
That's why you kill it like that.
He's got
spirit goes.
I assume
like
he's got spirit glue.
Wow. He climbed into the boat and stood over the body of his dead son. For some time he gazed at him. Slowly he took off his arm ring, Draupnir, the gold ring that dropped 8 rings of equal value on every 9th night, and slipped it onto Balder's arm. And then Odin bent down and put his mouth to Balder's ear. Again he gazed at his son, and then he left Ringhorn. I fucked your wife.
Yeah.
At a sign from Odin, a servant stepped forward with a lighted brand. He set fire to the pyre, and at once a steady plume of smoke, twisting and spiraling, rose into the calm air. Thor raised his hammer, and slowly and solemnly he intoned the magic words to hollow the cremation. Then a dwarf called Lit, because he was so lit,
this shit is lit,
who had lost all interest in the proceedings, came running along the water's edge. He passed right in front of Thor.
This shit is not lit.
And Thor was so enraged that he put out a foot and tripped him. And before Lit had time to pick himself up, Thor gave him a terrible kick. The dwarf flew through the air and landed right onto the lickings and the curdling pyre. In this way, he was burned to death beside Balder.
Okay, I know everybody's mad, but can I at least get bonus points for that amazing field goal?
The painter was released, and with it the pent emotions of the mourners. They wept as the boat began to drift out, rocking across the water. They wept as they talked about Boulder, the most beautiful, the most gentle, the most wise of them all.
He was so gentle.
Yeah, he was. He really slid those fings in. So. Anyway,
he did a thing with his tongue that would make you forget about the weird growth on his neck.
Ringhorn rode across the water. Sea winds caught at her and tugged her away. First, she was more like a boat than flame, but soon more flame than boat. She was a quivering shape, a farewell on the horizon, moving on towards the great cloud of her own making. For 9 nights, Hermann rode through the valley so deep and dark that he was unable to see anything. The ground fell away from him, and the cold fingers of the underworld began to reach up towards him and search him. The god crossed many rivers, all of which spring from the seething cauldron of Hrvangmir. Okay. Cool's full and defiant Gunthra, Forgem and bubbling Fimbolth. Fearsome slid and the storming Harid, Slig, Yig, and Vid, and Leapit, which streaked like... Okay, passed like lightning. At last Hermann came to the icy river of Golge and swirling torrent of river. Slipnir needed no spurring. He galloped across the bridge there. It was thatched with strips of gold. And on the far side, Hermann was stopped by the maiden Modgud, warden of the bridge, and she raised one pale arm, and it gleamed with an unearthly pallor. She said, "Before you go further, tell me your name and your lineage." Hermann kept quiet. And then Modgud said, 5 troops of dead men came this way yesterday. Dead men tell no tale.
Calm down, Pirates of the Caribbean 3?
I know, right? That's the question. They rode over this bridge, but you make much noise, and they all made together. Still Hermann said nothing. And Mordgud said, I can't say that you look like a man who has died. Who are you? And the god says,
Yo, hey there, buddy. How's it going there, friend? I'm Hermod. I'm Odin's son here. I must got to ride down there into hell. See if my brother's around there. I think he just died recently. Some crazy accident with a blind guy. His name's Baldur. Have you seen him on his way down there?
Mordgud replied, He crossed this river. He rode over his bridge, but the way to hell is no way short way. Far as you have come, it is still farther northwards and downwards. Northwards and downwards. Hermann thanked Mordgud, and she stepped aside.
Thank you, buddy.
Then Slipnir saw the way before him. Horse and rider galloped onward. So at last Hermann came to the massive gates and towering walls that Hel had set up in front of her hall, Illugnir. Slipnir stopped in his tracks and whined. Hermann dismounted and looked around in the dismal light. The gates were locked, impassable, it seemed, for all those not fated to pass beyond their way to the dreadful Nastrond. The shore of corpses. That's what it's called.
Sounds nice.
Clothing optional.
Clothing optional.
Hermann tightened his stirrups. He swung himself into the saddle and spurred Slipnir fiercely. Odin's steed galloped at the gates, and for a moment he seemed to pause, and then he gave a great thrust with his back legs and leaped clear of the iron gates. Hermann boldly took Slipnir right up to Illugnir's doors. There he dismounted once more and walked straight into the cavernous halls. Faces without numbers turned towards him. And faces of newly dead, faces green and rotting, faces less fresh.
In the distance, a DJ's record
bone
scratches and the music stops.
Red light stop. Sorry.
That would be hell. It's just red light, green light on replay with an overly obnoxious club DJ playing it too. So bam, 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 bam. Red light, stop. Green light, bam, bam, bam. Yeah.
Those fucking horns. Yeah,
DJ red light.
Faces pitiful, unanswered, resigned, many scowling or leering or treacherous or murderous and in agony. All of them with eyes only for Herman. But Herman saw only the fair figure sitting in the high seat, his brother Balder. For Balder's sake and the sake of the gods, resolute Herman stayed in the night in the hall. He sat by the door and kept his own counsel, silent in the company of the dead, who could not speak unless spoken to them.
Don't speak unless spoken to, bitch.
He waited for hell to rise from sickbed and drew back its hastings, glimmering misfortune. Those are two things.
Hey, ghost, what the five fingers say to the face?
So hell and her little thing, town cottage thing, her hall is called sickbed. And its hangings are called glimmering misfortune. Anyway, hell's face and body were those of a living woman, but her thighs and legs were those of a rotting corpse, modded and moldering. She crept towards the god, looking glooming and grim. Herman greeted Hel and told her of the grief of the gods. He said all of Asgard was caught in a tearfall and a storm of sorrows. He wove his words with care and love and asked Hel if she would agree to let Balder ride home with him. Hel thought for a while, and her expression did not change. I'm not so sure, she said at last.
She's just all high.
That's Balder is as much loved as people say.
I like to imagine Balder enjoys the shitty party. He's just sitting up with bro, look, they threw a party. They keep playing my favorite song. Red light, stop.
She waited for Herman to reply, but Herman said nothing. Then Hel said, however, it can be put to the test. She spoke as slowly as Ganglati and Ganglot, her aged servants, and moved so slow that her words were like the punctuations between her silences. Hel declared, if everything in the 9 worlds, dead and alive, weeps for Balder, let him return to Asgard. But if anything demurs, if even one thing will not weep, Balder must remain in Niflheim. And with these words, Hel slowly turned away from Hermon.
Bye.
Then Balder stood up, and Nanna rose from the shades and stood beside him. They walked the length of the hall, and they passed between the benches of corpses, and Balder's face was white and shining still. Balder and Nanna came up to Herman and greeted him and led him out of the Illugnir. Then Balder took off the arm ring, Draupnir, that Odin had fixed on him when he was laying lifeless in Ringhorn, and he put it onto Herman's hand, and he said,
give this to my father in remembrance of me.
And Nanna offered Herman linen for a headdress and other gifts.
Give Odin these panties. He'll know what they're supposed to mean.
She says, these are for Frigg, and this is for Fulla. And she handed Herman a gold ring. Herman took leave of Balder and Nanna and mounted Sleipnir and rode without rest until he had reached Asgard. And there, in Gladsheim, he told the god and gods and goddesses, all he had seen and all that was said to him. The Aesir sent out messengers to every corner of the 9 worlds, and all that they asked was that dead Balder should be wept for out of hell.
Just imagine to the normal people of the world. Man, this plague has been stricken us for 2 years now. I've lost 7 children. My wife went lame in her left leg, and my hands no longer work from this hard labor I must sustain just to feed myself. And I pray to the gods every night that they might help me. And then a god actually shows up and they're just like, hey, just so you know, we're all doing a thing. So if you could cry for Balder, he was like this super pretty, super awesome god. We all gave him gifts and like
He's gentle.
Crazy food. He was so
He'll
gentle
tickle your
and nice.
asshole first.
He tickles your asshole before he even puts your balls in his mouth. And the guy's just sitting there. 7 of 11 of my children. Okay, sure. I'll fucking cry for this Balder. Will you bring the crops next year? No promises.
As each substance had sworn an oath before that it would not harm Balder, each substance now wept. Fire wept, iron and every other kind of metal wept. The stones wept, the earth wept, the water wept, the trees wept. Every kind of illness wept, and all the animals wept. All the birds wept, and every kind of poisonous plant wept, and so did every sliding snake. Just as these things wept, then they are covered with rime and began to thaw again. The gods' messengers were making their way back to Asgard when they all felt that they had overlooked nothing. Then they came across a giantess sitting in a cave, and the messengers asked,
"What is your name?"
The giantess says,
"Fuck off!" Thok!
Then the messengers explained their mission and asked Thok to weep as all things had wept. Weep and weep Balder out of hell. The giantess glowered at the messengers, and then she answered sourly.
Thok smash. Thok will weep dry tears over Balder's funeral. I never care for old man's son. Alive or dead, I have no use for him. Let her hold what she has. Thok smash.
Despite the messengers' prayers and entreaties, Thok refused to say another word. She would not recant and she would not weep.
Thok make boom boom.
Then the messengers left her. They mournfully crossed Bifrost, and what they had to say was clear from the manner of their coming. The gods and goddesses ached, and they felt old and confused and unable and weary. Not one of them doubted that Thok the giantess in the cave was also Loki.
I should have put with that.
So this is when
Thok will weep tears. I am definitely Thok, a giantess, and not just Loki on stilts.
Okay, so this is when Loki's fighting comes in. So he talks shit.
Fuck you and fuck your mother.
Now we're on to the binding of Loki.
Ah.
Woo! We're close.
We're getting close. Almost Ragnarok.
Loki knew that his days in Asgard had come to an end. He knew how soon anguish can give way to anger, and was sure that the gods would avenge Balder's death and detention in hell. He ran away.
Toodaloo.
He swam away from home.
I'm going away where I'll be appreciated.
He made for a deserted part of Midgard, a remote place in the mountains at the head of a steep valley that fell into the sea. He rubbed a hollow near Fengrang's Fall and used the rock and rubble laying all around and built himself a low house that no man was likely to see until he had stumbled into it.
Your authority is not recognized in Fort Kickass.
It had 4 doors so that Loki could keep watch in every direction. Even so, he felt unsafe, which a gull circled and shrieked, or a scree shifted on the mountain, or a wind whistled in the walls. The trickster leapt up in alarm, certain that he had been tracked down. It was not a matter of the days that passed without a single visitor. Loki's anxiety grew greater day by day, and he could not escape his own canker. Cancer, sure.
Canker cancer.
He thought he might be better off if he were out of the house and in disguise. At dawn, the shape changer turned himself into a salmon and leapt into the seething cauldron at the base of Fangring Falls. The cross currents whirled him around and thunder roared above him. Still, the salmon felt unsafe. In Loki's mind, it was not a question of whether, but of when the gods would catch up with him. But fearful as he was, he hunted in the hiding. And in hiding, he was more fearful of vengeance. He vowed to remain at large for as long as he had the wits to do so. Early one evening, Loki set beside a fire and began to play with some lengths of linen twine. He arranged them and rearranged them. He laid them out across each other and then tied them and made them into a net with so fine a mesh that not even a small fish could hope of slipping through it. For a long time he stared at his fine device. Suddenly he heard the sound of voices down in the valley, and he saw a group of gods making their way towards him.
Let's go catch that horse fucker.
Loki jumped up and threw the net into the fire and hurried out the door overlooking Fangring's Falls, and he ran down the slope, turned himself into a salmon once more, and slid into the boiling icy water. There was nothing that escaped Odin's eyes when he sat in Heshkafara. He saw comings and goings of every living creature in the 9 worlds, and when he saw Loki's efforts to escape his fate, he sent a party of gods from Asgard.
DJ Red Light
from Asgard to capture him.
That's right, y'all. I also do birthday parties. Hit me up, djredlight.com.
The first step across the threshold of Loki's house was Kvasir, the wisest of them all.
Cavassier.
I just raised my eyebrows. Hey. In the half-light, he peered around without a word. He looked at the rough table and bench, the bare walls, and almost lifeless fire. Kvasir bent down and stared at the pattern of gleaming white ash. He carefully examined it and understood what he saw. He says to his companions,
"Now I reckon this is some sort of device, like for catching a fish, maybe. Let's go catch us a fish."
The gods sat down in Loki's house and gave over the rest of the evening in making a wide net with which to drag the pool at the base of the falls and the river that hurried down the valley into the sea. They copied the subtle pattern that Kvasir had found in the embers and and before they slept, oh, wow, they had finished their work and were well content with it. Wow. He didn't say shit. Great job, everyone.
He didn't say shit.
At dawn, the gods walked under the Fangring's Falls. The roar of the water slamming against the water was deafening. The air was misty with whirling and drifting sprays, and the gods stared around them, and the whole world looked oyster and ivory and gray. Then Thor took one end of the net and, motioning to the others to stay where they were, waded across the water.
You want me to put down the net?
So that the gods began to drag the river, and the salmon swam downstream in front of them. After a time, Willy Loki found a safe place where the waters... Wiley.
Willy Loki.
Wow, Wiley Loki.
Willy Loki.
Found a safe place where the waters seleucid between 2 slimy boulders, and he nestled there so that the net could only scrape his back and did not snare him. When the gods brought up the net, there was nothing in it. They were all so sure, though, that they felt something alive, that they had all felt something alive in the water. They decided to try again, and this time they used stones to weigh the bottom of the dragnet so that nothing could swim under it. Now the gods made their way back to the base of Fangring's Falls, and Thor on one side and all the rest on the other, and dropped the net into the water. Once more, Loki swam ahead of them, and they dragged the river. But this time there was no safety on the riverbed. He had no choice but to hurry on downstream. And when Loki saw the gods meant to drag the tumbling river right down to the shallows where it opened on the sea, he turned around to face the net. He arched his back. He arched his back and with all of his strength sprang into the air and right over it. The gods shouted and pointed at the salmon.
I am totally not Loki in a fake fin. I am a salmon.
The gods shout.
I like to imagine it jumping over him like Free Willy.
Right. That'd be great.
It's just
I
Loki.
like to imagine all the flying fish, some of them just slapping them in the face.
Loki and just a mermaid bottom. I'm a salmon. I'm an amazing shapeshifter. Yeah, no one can tell.
Ninja Loki. The god shouted and pointed at the salmon shining in the sunlight. They hurried back up to Fingring's Falls, and there they argued about how to catch it. Each god had his own idea, but in the end they bowed to Kvasir. He said that they should split into 2 groups, one on either bank, all except Thor, who was to wade in the midstream, just behind the net. Now the gods began to drag the river for a 3rd time, and as before, Loki swam downstream some way in front of them, and he knew the only 2 choices were to open to him, to squirm and jump across the long stretch of shallows and into the sea, or turn and leap over the dragnet again. He thought the gods might catch him before he reached the safety of the deep water, so he turned, arched his back into the rainbow, and sprang into the air. Blop! The salmon flashed in the sunlight and jumped clear of the net. Then Thor groped and clutched at it, and the salmon slithered through his hands. Thor held on and tightened his grip. He squeezed and stayed the slippery salmon by its tail.
That's a brother in a fish suit.
It writhed and it twisted, but it could not escape. Loki was caught at last, and he knew it.
See, I would have went for the method of just dropping a shit ton of lightning on the roof. Oh, he's in this river. Hold on. Do you want me to put the hammer down? Lightning bolt. So I killed all of the salmon, but he's...
Loki would have been fine. He would just floated up to the top. After Balder's death, not one of the gods would stain Gladheim by spilling Loki's blood. But there was nothing holy about the barren ground of Midgard, and they were all eager to take vengeance on him, while Thor and one group of the gods led Loki into a twilit cave, a dismal cavern belonging to bats and tickings with drips of water from stalactites. Stalactites.
Stalactites.
Thank you. That's it. The other party went off in pursuit of Loki's 2 sons, Vali and Narvi. They changed Vali into a wolf, and at once he leapt up into his brother and sucked his teeth into his throat. He ripped Narvi's body apart before bounding away, howling towards Jotunheim. The gods took over where Vali had left off. They drew out Narvi's entrails and made their way into the cave. Loki's faithful wife, Sigyn, went with them, sorrowing over the fate of her 2 sons and the fate of her husband. Loki was thrown to the ground. He lay still, and he looked at nobody and said nothing. Then the gods took the 3 slabs of rocks, stood them on end, and bored a hole through each of them. They stretched Loki over them, unwound Narvi's entrails, and bound him with the guts of his own son, as no one had ever been done before.
Jesus, guys. Yeah, so Loki's is a bad guy in this, right?
Yeah, I guess. They trusted Loki's shoulders to one slab, twisting the guts around his bodies and under his armpits. They strapped Loki's loins to one slab, winding the guts around and round his hips. They clamped Loki's kneecap to one slab, tying the guts around his legs. And no sooner was Loki bound than the entrails of his son soon became hard as iron.
What did that kid eat? Yeah.
A lot
of rocks.
A lot of shit. A lot of cement. Pure made cement. Then Scotty carried a vile snake into the cave. She fastened it to the stalactite high up in the darkness so that its venom would drip straight onto Loki's face. For all of his wiles and wit, there was nothing Loki could do. He laid still, and he looked at nobody and said nothing. And the gods left Loki there, no longer flushed but heavy-hearted and sorrowing as they left him to his fate and to faithful Sigyn. Sigyn and Loki waited in the damp twilight cave, listening to the eerie echoes of each drip, the sound of the silence, the sound of their own breathing. Signy holds a wooden bowl over Loki's face and slowly fills it with the snake's venom. When it is brimming, Siggy carries the bowl away and empties it into a rock basin, a fermenting pool of poison. Loki is left unguarded, and he screws up his eyes. The snake does not wait. Its venom splashes onto Loki's face. In the torment, he shudders and writhes. He cannot escape, and the whole earth quakes. Loki lies bound. That is how things are now, and how things will remain until Ragnarok, which is the next
chained
one.
Up.
So what, like 15 days?
Yeah, 15 days.
I mean,
No, it's supposed to be all of history, I think. Most of history.
Until Ragnarok.
Because the way they lay it out is that Ragnarok will come, but has not come yet. But all the other stories have come. So we're just waiting on Ragnarok, basically every day when we wake up.
Oh. I thought Ragnarok already happened. I'm so confused.
No.
It's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming, guys. All right, you ready for this last one?
So tune in next week. No. Just fucking with you folks.
Okay, we got this. Sorry, gotta give myself a little bounce jump.
Get pumped. It's fucking Ragnarok.
Prep.
Go.
An axe age, a sword age. Shields will be gashed. There will be a wind age and a wolf age before the world is wrecked. First of all, Midgard will be wrenched and racked by wars for 3 winters. 3 winters.
Yeah,
Fathers
3,000.
will slaughter sons. Brothers will be drenched in one another's blood. Mothers will desert their menfolk and seduce their own sons. Brothers will bed with sisters. Then Fimbulvitr, the winter of winters, will grip the throttle of Midgard. Driving snow clouds will converge from the north and the south and the east and the west. There will be bitter frosts, biting winds, and the shining sun will be helpless. 3 such winters will follow each other and no summers between them. So the end will begin, and then the children of the old giantess in Ironwood will have their say. The wolf's skull will seize the sun between his jaws and swallow her. He will splatter Asgard with gore, and his brother Hades will catch the moon and mangle him. The stars will vanish from the sky. The earth will start to shudder, and then great trees will sway and topple, mountains will shake, and the rock and come crushing down. And every bond and fetter will burst. Fenrir will run free. Egthir, watchman of the giants, will sit on his grave mound and strum his harp, smiling grimly. Nothing escapes the red cock Haljar.
Boom, nothing escapes it.
His name is Fajar.
Fajar.
He will crow to the giants from Birdwood. At the same time, the cock who wakes the warriors every day in Valhalla, golden-combed Gullinkambi, will crow to the gods. A third cock, rust red, will raise the dead in hell. Wow.
Hey, I'm Hell's cock, everybody.
The sea will rear up and waves will pommel the shores because Jotmundur, the Midgard serpent, is twisting and wreathing in fury. working his way onto the dry land, and in those high seas Naglfar will break loose, the ship made from the dead men's nails. The bows and the waist and the stern and the hold will be packed with giants, and Hrim will stand at the helm, heading towards the plains of Vigrid. Loki, too, free from his fetters, will take to the water. He will set sail towards Vigrid from the north, and his dead weight will be all the ghastly crew in hell. Then the brothers Fenrir and Jotunmungr will move forward side by side. Fenrir's slavering mouth will gape wide open, so wide that his lower jaw scrapes against the ground and his upper jaw presses against the sky. It would gape still wider if there was room for more. Flames will dance in Fenrir's eyes and leap from his nostrils, and with each breath, meanwhile, Jotunmungr will spew venom. All the earth and the sky will be splashed and stained with their poison. The world will be in uproar, the air quaking with booms and blares of their echoes. Then sons of Muspel will advance from the south and tear apart the sky itself as they too close in on Vigrid. Wow. Surt will lead them, his sword blazing like the sun itself. And as they cross Bifrost, the rainbow bridge will crack and break behind them. So all the giants and all the inmates of hell and Fenrir and Jormungr and Surt and the blazing sons of Muspel will gather on Vigrid. They will all but fill the plain that stretches 120 leagues in every direction. The gods, meanwhile, will not be idle. No, sir. Sorry. Heimdall will leave his hall, Himmelsbjorg, and raise the great horned Jarl to his mouth. He will sound such a blast that it will be heard throughout the 9 worlds. All the gods will wake and at once meet in council, and then Odin will mount Sleipnir and gallop to Mimir's spring and take advice from Mimir there. Yggdrasil itself will moan, the ash that always was and waves over all that is. The leaves will tremble, its limbs shiver and shake even as 2 humans take refuge deep within it. Everything in heaven and in earth and hell will quiver. Then all the Aesir and the Einherjar in Valhalla will arm themselves. They will don their helmets and their coats of mails and grasp their swords and spears and shields. 800 fighting men will forge through each of the hall's 540 doors. The vast host will march towards Vigrid, and Odin will ride at their head, wearing a golden helmet and a shining corselet, brandishing Gungnir. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, I don't know. Odin will make straight for the wolf Fenrir, and Thor, right beside him, will be unable to help because Jotunmungr will at once attack him. Freyr will fight the fire giant Surt, and when Surt whirls his flaming blade, Freyr will rue the day that he gave his own good sword to his servant Skirnir.
I remember that!
It will be a long struggle, though, before Freyr succumbs. The hound Garm and Nipkiller will leap at the throats of the one-handed Tyr, and they will kill one another. The old age enemies Loki and Heimdall will meet once more, and each will be the cause of the other's death. Thor's son of Earth, the gaping Jotunmungr, have met before too, and they are well matched. At Vigrid, the god will kill the serpent, but he will only be able to stagger back 9 steps before he falls dead himself, poisoned by the venom of Jotunmungr spews all over him. Both ways. Odin and Fenrir were the first to engage, and their fight will be fearsome. And in the end, though, the wolf will seize the Allfather between his jaws and swallow him. That will be the death of Odin. At once his son Vidar will stride forward and press one foot onto Fenrir's bottom jaw, and the shoe he will wear then has been long time in the making. Don't know what that means. It consists of all the strips and the bits of leathers pared off the heels and toes of new shoes since the time began. All the leftovers thrown away as gifts for the gods. Then Vindar will take hold of Fenrir's other jaw and tear the wolf apart, so avenging his father. Then Surt will fling fire in every direction. Asgard and Midgard and Jotunheim and Nilfenheim will become furnaces, places of raging flame, swirling smoke, ashes, only ashes. The 9 worlds will burn and the gods will die. The Nihir will die. Men and women and children in Midgard will die. Elves and dwarfs will die. Giants will die. Monsters and creatures of the underworld will die. Birds and animals will die. The sun will be dark and there will be no stars in the sky. The earth will sink into the sea. The earth will rise again out of the water, fair and green. The eagle will fly over the cataracts, swooping into the thundering to catch fish under crags. Corn will ripen in the fields that were never sown. Vidar and Valley will still be alive, and they will survive the fire and the flood, and make their way back to Idavol, the shining place where palaces once stood. The shining place where places once stood.
Yeah.
Sorry.
A place of places.
Modi and Magni, sons of Thor, will join them there, and they will inherit their father's hammer, Mjolnir. Mimir. And Boulder and Hod will come back from the world of the dead. It will not be long before they too tread the new green grass on Idavol. Honir will be there as well, and he will hold the wand and foretell what is to come. The sons of Vili and V will make up the new number. The gods in heaven, home of the winds. Remember who Vili and V is?
The first people.
No, those are Odin's brothers.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
They will sit down in the sunlight and begin to talk. Turn by turn, they will call up such memories such as they are known to them and them alone. They will talk over many things that happened in the past, and the evil of Yomunger and the wolf Fenrir. And then, amongst the waving grass, they will find golden chessboards, treasures owned once by the Aesir, and gaze at them in wonder. What is this?
What is this?
Many courts will rise once more, some good, some evil. The best place of all will be Gimli in heaven. A building fairer than the sun, roofed with gold. That is where the rulers will live, at peace with themselves and each other. And then there will be Brimer and Olknir, where the ground is always warm underfoot. The Bahamas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There will always be plenty of good drinks there for those who have a taste for it. And there will be Sindri, a fine hall that stands in the dark mountains of Nidafjol, made woolly of red gold. Holy of red gold, sorry.
Woolly.
Woolly red gold. Good men will live in these places. But there will be another hall in Nastrond, the shore of corpses. That place in the underworld will be as vile as it is vast. All of its doors will face north. All the walls and roofs will be made of wattled snakes. Wow. Their heads facing inwards, blowing so much poison that it runs in rivers throughout the halls. Oath breakers and murderers and philanthropers will wade through those rivers. Nidhogg too will outlive the fire and the flood, and under Yggdrasil he will suck the blood from the bodies of the dead.
Vampire. So we got heaven, hell, and vampires out of Ragnarok.
Do you remember who Nidhogg is? That's that dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Snibbling on the tit roots. Anyway. The 2 humans who hid themselves deep within Yggdrasil, some say Hodamir's wood, will be called Lith and Lithrisir. Yeah. Surt's fire will not scorch them. It will not even touch them. Wow. Their food will be the morning dew. through the branches and through the leaves, they will come see a light. They will see light come back. Wow. Sorry, I really need to get that one out. That's my bad. Do. For before the sun is caught and eaten by the wolf's skull, she will give birth to a daughter no less fairer than herself, who will follow the same sky path. Ooh, and light the world. Lif and Lifthrister will have children, and their children will bear children, and there will be life and new life, and life everywhere on earth. And that was the end, and this is the beginning. And this is the end.
And this is the beginning.
Good day.
Yeah, I like that they have a new, the end sets up for a new beginning.
Yeah.
You know, after Ragnarok, it's just part
It's
of
not all
part of a
over.
cycle.
It's just done with the gods.
Yeah, like the gods are done, and it's time for humans to burst
Now
down
on to the
trees.
stories where Maggie and Modi will fucking take off. How are they going to share the hammer? They're going to both stand on opposite sides of the room and call the hammer to them and just fucking pommel whoever's in the middle.
Yeah. No, they're each going to put one hand on the hammer.
No. Like, so they have their enemy in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So one's going to stand on one side of the room and the other one, they're just going to call it back and forth to each other.
To me.
As it fucks up whoever's in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would do.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that was fun. It's epic. It's epic.
Really
Feels like the end of a era.
It was. We've been on this one
we
for
started
a run.
two years ago, maybe even.
Shit.
We started these Norse Tales.
It was almost 2 years.
Yeah, I almost feel like this is a Ragnarok of our own.
Now
and
there's
then the
more.
Norse Tales will finish, and there will be other tales.
Don't worry. I also have still like a shit ton of Norwegian folk tales.
Oh yeah, and there's still like the Vinland Saga.
Yeah.
We've got to do the Vinland Saga at some
Yeah.
point. We already did Sigurd and all that, but we've got
Brunhilde.
Vinland and a couple other cool sagas
there's-
to do.
Way more.
Yeah.
We're going to get into who Bjorn Ironside truly is.
Yeah.
Someday.
Maybe. That's a little more history. Well,
Some
thank
other
you.
stuff.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Yes.
It's been fun. It's been real. It's been real fun.
Yeah.
Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, tell your friends. Go back and binge listen to all 11 episodes of Norse Tales and tell us how well we've progressed. I know the first one, the sound is shit on. That's when we were very new.
But it was
still.
probably my funniest one, though.
No.
Yeah, because it was about the one where Loki gets fucked by a horse.
No, that was like the third, I think.
Was it?
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
It's been a hot
Been
minute.
a couple of years.
Yeah. But yeah, we love you folks. Thank you
Don't
guys
forget
for
to
making
check
this
out
what it
our
is.
store.
Yeah, check out the merch store, teespring.com, teespring.com/high-mythology-merch. We got some stuff on there. Browse
I redid
around.
the pants. They're pretty dope.
Yeah, check out
I got
some
myself
of
a
this
pair.
stuff.
They're pretty nice.
Yeah, Kim just got her first pair of pants.
Makes my butt
We're going to
look
get some
perky.
sample pictures in there. It does. And a nice butt.
Ow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, yeah. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.